Hi everyone, welcome to my Teach Me project number 3, where I will be talking about the different structures that are associated with the brain, as well as the blood vessels that travel to and from the brain. The first structure we're going to start off with is the dura mater. If you look at the picture all the way to the left, the green arrow depicts the dura mater of the sheep brain that we dissected in lab. If you guys remember, the dura mater is going to be made up of dense irregular connective tissue, so it's going to be very strong and it's going to cover the entire brain. The next one is the superior sagittal sinus, and it's depicted by that blue arrow, and it's going to be that whole top portion. And the function of the superior sagittal sinus is to drain out the CSF, the cerebral spinal fluid. And the picture to the right is just an overview of a color-coded brain to depict the different lobes. The one in blue is going to be our frontal lobe. The one in pink is the parietal lobe, and the one in purple is the occipital lobe. In green, we have the temporal lobe. That structure below it in orange is going to be the cerebellum, and that structure below that one in yellow is going to be our brainstem. The line highlighted in blue is going to be our central sulcus, and the purpose of this sulcus is to separate the frontal lobe from the parietal lobe. The next one is the longitudinal fissure, which is highlighted in green, and this fissure essentially just separates the left and right hemispheres of the brain. And the picture to the right is the best picture that I could find that was, in my opinion, depicting the arachnoid mater the best. If you look at the pia mater, you don't see all those vessels and veins, and if you look at the right side where the arachnoid mater is depicted, you can kind of see that thin layer. And this is not to get confused with the dura mater, but this is the best picture that I can find to kind of depict this. I hope this helps. On the left, we have a model of the human brain, and on the right, we have a model of the sheep brain. To start off, we're going to look at the structure surrounded with the black line or the black arrow, and that's going to be the cerebellum. Inside the cerebellum, we're going to have those white structures that is called the arbor vitae. And the way that I remember that this structure is called the arbor vitae is that it looks like a tree, and arbor in Spanish means tree, therefore arbor vitae. The next one is the corpora quadrigemina, which is depicted in purple. This structure was a bit hard for me to remember or kind of figure out where it was, but it's going to be right next to the cerebellum. The next one is the pons, which is depicted in blue. The way that I remember the name of this is how the professor explained it, which is that it looks like a beer belly, and if you were to hit it, it would make the noise of pons. The next one is the medulla oblongata, which is highlighted in hot pink, and that one is right below the pons. And they both make up the midbrain. Here are a few additional structures that are required for the lab exam, starting off with the optic chiasma, which is going to be depicted with that black arrow. The next one is the corpus callosum, which is depicted with that neon green arrow. This one's going to be fairly easy to depict as it's that thick band that's inside of the brain. The next one is the thalamus, which is depicted with the purple arrow, and that's the structure below is going to be the hypothalamus, which is depicted with the hot pink arrow. And remember, hypo means below, so hypothalamus is below the thalamus. The next one is going to be the pineal gland, and if you see in the human brain, it's that pink little bulb structure that you see, and on the sheep brain, it's depicted a little bit larger, or maybe because it's zoomed in, but the pineal gland is depicted with that yellow arrow. Here we have the 4 ventricles of the brain. The first picture on the left is going to be the coronal plane of the sheep brain that we dissected in class. The first 2 ventricles are the lateral ventricles, which are depicted in yellow, and the third ventricle is depicted by that black line, which is found below the lateral ventricles. The fourth ventricle can be seen on the right picture. This one is going to be found right next to the cerebellum, and the dotted green line is going to be our cerebral aqueduct, and it's essentially just that space in between the midbrain and the fourth ventricle. Here we have the blood vessels that go to and from the brain. I decided to break it up a little bit just so that it's not all one huge picture and it's easier to understand. So starting with the structure of circle of Willis, that's going to be specifically that area in the center that I guess kind of looks like a circle. The next one is the anterior communicating artery, which is found above the circle of Willis. And the one to the right is the middle cerebral artery, which can be found on both sides. Next is the posterior cerebral artery, which is depicted with that purple arrow and should somewhat be highlighted by that black box. The next one is the basilar artery, which is depicted with that gray arrow. And the two arteries that are pointed by the green arrows are going to be our posterior communicating artery, and to the right of that is just the bottom view of the brain, which is pretty cool because you can actually see what that structure looks like. To the right of that is the same picture that is going to depict the superior sagittal sinus, which is responsible for also draining blood and cerebrospinal fluid. Here we have the rest of the blood vessels that we need to know for the lab practical. So if you look at the picture to the left, that black arrow is pointing towards that neck region. That's going to be our internal jugular vein. And looking at the lab manual, this is the only vein that we are responsible to know for the lab practical. And the picture to the right is going to be the rest of the arteries. They're on that list that we need to know. So the one with the white arrow is going to be our anterior cerebral artery. The one in green is going to be our vertebral arteries. And the one in yellow is going to be our common carotid arteries. This is the one that you can feel if you put your fingers on the side of your neck. You can feel your pulse. For my last slide, I decided to do a mini quiz to test your knowledge on the arteries that I just talked about. So if you guys can, grab a pen, pencil, and answer the questions that are on the screen. So go ahead and answer the name of the artery in green, the one in black, purple, blue, and yellow. I will give you guys about 30 seconds or so, and I'll come back and give you guys the answers. Alright guys, so I hope that was enough time. We're going to start off with the first one, which is name the artery in green, which is going to be the circle of Willis. The next one is name the artery in black. That one is going to be our anterior cerebral artery. Name the artery in purple. That's going to be the common carotid arteries. Next one is name the artery in blue. That's going to be the internal carotid arteries. And lastly, name the artery in yellow. That's going to be the basilar artery. And that concludes the quiz. I hope you guys did well. And thank you guys for watching if you watched the video. And best of luck on the lab practical.